Morning. Sister Nivedita was a seeker of truth. Margaret, external activities brought about an unfoldment of the strength and subtlety of her intellectual understanding and expansion of her natural faculties. But at this time, her deep religious feeling agitated her profoundly. She felt uncertain and insecure, for though since her childhood she had come under various religious influence, none of them could satisfy her. She was born of religious parents. Her father was a minister of the church, and she had inherited his religious fervor. Also, as a student, she had been in Congregationalist boarding school. When she was about 15, when she was about 15, the Tractarian movement, which sought to establish the supremacy and dignity of the church above the state, caught her imagination. What appealed to her most in it was the color which it introduced into service and importance of symbols and sacraments. It is taught her the value of tradition, but the Tractarian movement proved too rigid and illiberal for Margaret's freedom loving and emotional nature, and she left it. Later in London, Margaret was to join the Broad Church School of the Church of England, but its teaching seemed to her full of cynicism, and it could not satisfy her religious emotions. Margaret withdrew herself from these systems, for she was in search of a more Christian and more human religion. At one time, she turned to the study of the natural sciences, and her and for some years the Buddha and his doctrine attracted her attention. Yet she always felt that she had not found the right path in her quest for truth. Neither the church nor its doctrines could sustain her till she met Swami Vivekananda in 1895. His teaching seemed to light up all her previous experiences and gave her a new life with a new meaning. It is of interest here to quote her own words about the earnest efforts as a seeker after truth in a lecture delivered in the Hindu Ladies Social Club in Bombay in 1902. She said, I was born and bred an Englishwoman, and up to the age of 18, I was trained and educated as English girls are. Christians' religious doctrines were, of course, early instilled into me. Even from my girlhood, I was inclined to venerate all religious teaching, and I devotedly worshipped the child Jesuits, loved him with my whole heart for the self sacrifices he always willing underwent, and felt I could not worship him enough for his crucifying himself to bestow salvation on the human race. But after the age of 18, I began to harbor doubts as to the truth of Christian doctrines. Many of them began to seem to me false and incompatible with truth. These doubts grew stronger and stronger, and at the time my faith in Christianity tottered more and more. For 7 years I was in this wavering state of mind, very unhappy and yet very, very eager to seek the truth. I shunned going to church, and yet sometimes my longing to bring restfulness to my spirit impelled me to rush into church and be absorbed in the service in order to feel at peace within, as I had hitherto done and as others around me were doing. But alas, no peace, no rest was there for my troubled soul, all eager to know the truth. During the 7 years of wavering, it occurred to me that in the study of natural science I should surely find the truth. I was seeking, so I began ardently to study how this world was created and all things in it, and I discovered that in the law of nature at least there was consistency. But it made the doctrines of the Christian religion seem all the more inconsistent. Just then I happened to get a life of Buddha, and in it I found that here also was a child who lived ever so many centuries before the child Christ, but whose sacrifices were no less self abnegating than those of the other. This dear child Gautama took a strong hold on me, and for the next 3 years I plunged into the study of the religion of Buddha and became more and more convinced that the salvation he preached was decidedly more consistent with the truth than the preaching of the Christian religion. And now came the turning point to my faith. The Swami I met was no other than Swami Vivekananda, who afterwards became my guru and whose teaching has given the relief that my doubting spirit had been longing for so long. The prevailing mood of the cultured European, though then, was one of the doubt and negation. There was lack of feeling and faith in all spheres of life. It was natural, therefore, that an earnest seeker after truth like Margaret, who could not adapt the religious instruction of her childhood to her own mental growth, should experience an anguished sense of uncertainty and void. Her own generous outlook and readiness to get truth from whatever direction it came, however, led her to accept the Swami Vedantic doctrine as a whole. To not of a few of us, the word of Swami came as living water to men perishing of thirst. Many of us had been conscious for 8 years past of that growing uncertainty and despair with regard to religion, which had beset the intellectual life of Europe for half a century. Belief in the dogmas of Christianity had become impossible to us. Has become impossible to us, and we had no means such as we now hold by which to separate the doctrinal self from the corner of reality in our faith. To this, the Vedanta has given intellectual confirmation and philosophical expression of their own mistrusted intuitions. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. When the Swami went to London in 1895, he was known as the Hindu yogi. He gained popularity in a very short time, and one day Lady Isabel Margesson invited him to her home. Among the few friends who were invited to meet him and hear him speak was Margaret. Many of her friends knew of her spiritual aspiration, and one of them suggested that the Hindu yogi might help her in her quest for truth. Would she not like to go? Out of curiosity to know what was happening, Margaret accepted the invitation. Events were slowly guiding her to her destiny. We should also like to see how Swami Vivekananda went to London, and we will narrate that part right now. In the last quarter of the 19th century, a tidal wave of spirituality arose in India that was destined to flood not only that vast land but also the perched uplands of the distant countries of Europe and America. At the source of the mighty force was Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of spiritual greatness that had been India's for countless ages, and his disciple Swami Vivekananda, whom he made an instrument for awakening the spiritual consciousness of man and woman in many lands. It was by divine sanction that Swami Vivekananda left the ancient shores of India, and that his splendid and dauntless spirit led him to preach Vedantic doctrines in the West. After Sri Ramakrishna has left his body, Swami Vivekananda went on a pilgrimage which came to an end at Cape Comorin. For months he traveled all over India, meeting and mixing with all classes of people, sharing the food and bed of a Pariah one day, the next day accepting honors from Maharajas and learned Pandits. India he had always loved, but till now she had been a mystery to him. Now she was revelation. He discovered that India was still rich in her spiritual heritage but was impoverished physically. The poverty and weakness of the people made him shed tears. Sitting on the last bit of Indian rock at Cape Comorin, he received the light of inspiration for the regeneration of his motherland. Though a Sannyasin, it was not for him to lose himself in the bliss of Samadhi. His Guru had one day warned him for this selfish desire of his by saying, Naren, I thought you were made of better stuff. In his last days, Sri Ramakrishna, unable even to speak, wrote on a piece of paper, Naren, will you teach others? Narendranath protested, but the master replied, you will do so. He then told others, the time will come when he will shake the world to its foundations through the strength of his intellectual and spiritual powers. He was now understanding the deep significance of his master's word. He must act, he must preach religion to the world and vow to allay the sufferings of the poverty stricken, ill clad, ill fed, illiterate people of his country. In 1893, he left the country to participate in the Parliament of Religion in Chicago. He was unknown and had no official credentials, but he had faith in the divine command that was animating him. Even before embarking for America, he said to his brother disciple, Swami Turiyananda, the Parliament of Religion is being organized for this. My mind tells me so. You will see it verified at no distant date. And so it proved to be. Eyewitness recorded that Swami Vivekananda stole the show by his personality and his message delivered in the name of Master of Religion or Mother of Religion. In the land of abundance and comfort, he spoke of renunciation and the only path to immortality. In the land of intoleration, he proudly declared that he came from a land which not only believed in universal tolerance but accepted all religion as true. After 2 years' stay in America, he turned his thought towards Europe. Miss Henrietta Muller and Mr. E.T. Stadi has invited him to London. Miss Muller had heard him speak in America and ever since had great admiration for him. Mr. Stadi had admiration and love for India. He has spent some years in Almora in India performing austerities. So both of were keen to see Swami and invited him to London. Swami gladly accepted the invitation. He was overworked and tired, and friends agreed that the voyage would give him the rest he needed. Mr. Francis Leggett, a friend of his, has invited him to visit Europe in order to be present at the marriage which was to be taken place in Paris. So in 1895, the Swami left New York with Mr. Leggett. On September 10, he left for London when he was received by friends among whom were Mr. Stadi and Miss Muller. He began his work within few days by means of private interviews and drawing room meetings. Lady Isabel Margerson and others of the aristocracy met him frequently. His friend arranged that he should deliver a lecture at the Princess Hall on October 22, and both the public and the press gave him a hearty welcome. In a few days, the Hindu yogi became not only well known but the most interesting figure in society. It seems, however, that Margaret did not meet him then, for as she records in her book, The Master as I Saw Him, she first saw him in November. Thank you very much.